The first thing I do when I get a watch on loan is to show it to my wife. Most of the time, she just kind of shrugs. The main Manhattan to her was too much like a bracelet. The Christopher Ward 660, and I quote, was boring. And the Yemmer I borrowed was met with, why can't the bracelet lie flat? That's just stupid. And that thing on the crown, it's going to snag on my clothes. She's just objectively not easy to please. But then I showed her the Chronoking from Nivada Grenchen, and she said, wow, that's a nice watch. It's much nicer than the one with the waiting list from Rolex. Is it expensive? And I answered, no, it's a quartz watch. And her reaction was, quartz? You mean like a cheap watch? I didn't even know they made nice, cheap watches. Well, they do. And this is one of them. The Nivada Chronoking Mecha Quartz Racing Grey with interchangeable bezels. Let's dive in. Nivada Grenchen was founded in 1926 in Grenchen, Switzerland, and became known in the mid-20th century for its tool watch designed for professionals and adventurers. The brand gained fame with models like the Chronomaster Aviator Sea Diver, which was a versatile chronograph, the Antarctic, which was worn during the US Navy's deep freeze expeditions in the 1950s. After fading during the quartz crisis, Nivada went through a period of different ownerships and were basically non-existent bar a continued interest in their sort of historic models. In 2018, two guys, Guillaume Ledet and Rémi Chabrat, collaborated to revive Nivada Grenchen. They focused on reissues of classic designs with updated manufacturing techniques. The first reissued models included the Chronomaster, the Antarctic, and the Depthmaster, which were all pretty positively received by collectors and enthusiasts. Social media was definitely something they used well to reintroduce the brand to a new audience. Their biggest market is by far the United States, that can't get enough of the Nivada story, apparently. Their most popular models are the Antarctic and different chronographs, including the Chronoking. This Chronoking comes in at a compact 38mm. It's a stainless steel cased finished in brushed and polished surfaces. The thickness is around 13.4, 13.5 millimeters in the Mecha Quartz versions. The lug-to-lug is 46.4 millimeters, which is about a full millimeter shorter than my point of reference, which is always the Omega Speedmaster. On the dial, you'll find a retro-inspired layout. It's got applied baton hour indices with superluminova. The subdials are either for chronograph minutes and hours or seconds, depending on the variant. It's got a bold central seconds hands and usually in a contrasting color. The one I have is blue. The bezel on the racing model has a tachymeter scale. It's interchangeable and the watch comes with multiple bezels as standard. A little curiosity is that the bezel can be rotated, which is not exactly standard for a tachymeter scale. It's a way to keep the cost down for the models that use the same case and come with a GMT scale. And it also means you don't have to align the tachymeter perfectly every single time. You snap it on and then you turn it until it's positioned correctly. Powering this model is a hybrid Mecha Quartz movement. It's a quartz timekeeping base with a mechanical feeling chronograph module on top. It's from Seiko. It's the VK63, VK64 family. Not that I pay that much attention to that stuff. It's crisp, it works, and it's got the behavior of a mechanical with the practicality of quartz. Water resistance is rated at 100 meters and the crystal is double domed sapphire. The dome's significant and raises the glass quite a bit above the bezel. It's part of what makes the watch feel a little bit tall, but just like the Speedmaster in Hesselite, it does something that I like. And it's that vintage feel that you don't quite get from the modern Zenith Chronomasters or a Daytona. The strap or bracelet is a racing style leather, but you can choose a whole host of other options. The price starts at just under $600. You've made it all the way to this part of the video where I plug my channel. Subscriptions and you subscribing is probably the best way I know that I'm doing a good job. So if you're new here and you're going to think, hey, this guy's doing good stuff, I'm going to keep coming back, click the subscribe button. It'll keep you updated when I make new videos. And of course, it tells me that I'm doing a good job. So really appreciate it. Thanks. I think the first thing a lot of people consider when buying a watch that costs less than $600 is, does it come across as looking cheap? And I know $600 isn't cheap in a world where you can get a Casio for $20, but we have to be real about this. The high end of watches doesn't stop at $1 million. So $600 is, in the grander scheme of things, definitely towards the cheapest end of the scale. The second thing to consider is who's looking. There's just a difference between a person who's into watches and has handled thousands versus a regular human being with interests and passions and a life outside of watches. I wish I was one of those people. Sadly, I'm not. I'm stuck here voluntarily, I suppose. So I can tell that it's cheaper because I immediately notice the tick of the quartz seconds hand. I can also tell that it's cheaper because of not the thickest or most premium leather in the world. There's a distance quite a distance up to Saffiano leather that goes onto a JLC reverser. I can tell by the weight of the watch. Mecha quartz and the case all make for a significantly lighter head than a Daytona or Speedmaster. The case is also a little bit softer in terms of finishing. Edges that on a Zenith might be razor sharp just have a slightly softer feel to them. The knurling on the bezel is also a little bit soft, which in fairness can be a design choice, but it is one I often associate with cheaper watches. It saves a little bit of money to do a softer, rounder bezel. The double dome sapphire has the effect of feeling a little bit plasticky, which is an experience you have, but that's kind of the same with the Hesselite on the Speedmaster. It just has a different feel. It's the roundness and the height that does it, and it's actually not a bad thing. It's what makes the watch feel a little bit vintage, but the softness is just one I associate with cheaper materials, just like Hesselite or acrylic glass. But, and here's the kicker, the bezel itself is every bit as premium looking and feeling as a high-end ceramic bezel. The pusher action is every bit as responsive as any high-end model. Pusher action is going to vary in a ton of ways from watch to watch. Some require ridiculous levels of pressure where others are a little bit spongy. This one is responsive and in kind of a Goldilocks way. The case finishing, when just looking at it, is premium. It's only when you touch it that you start to notice. The easiest way to save money at this point on a case is either fully polished or a rounded case or sandblasting the thing. The Chronoking has satin brushed flanks. The beveled and polished lugs are also there. It's got the gloss of the polished pushers. All these things signal premium and attention to detail. The dial is also a testament to how good dials are so attainable at this price point these days. It's not a flat dial where the sub-dials are just painted on. It's an actual stepped dial with a stepped chapter ring, sloped and inset subdials. In totality, the dial, the bezel, and the case are incredibly cohesive. One of the things you find at even $600 is the slapped together watch where a brand has found a standard case, usually oversized, and they've slapped in a teeny tiny movement and then put together some sort of dial that fits the case, but the proportions just come out totally wrong. There's none of that here. This is a complete good looking package and it visually punches well above its weight. My cynical, nitpicky watch nerd brain is always looking for flaws. The main dial is vertically striped and is the only piece that, to me, gives away the affordable price. So who's it for? This is for the vintage racer kind of person. You're not into the modernity of a Daytona or a Chronomaster Sport. You're looking into getting something like a Tag Heuer Skipper or a Carrera or a Hanhart, or maybe a Yema Rallygraph. The appeal of these kind of watches is that of the classic Porsche. We're talking about the original, where there was no traction control and any touch of the speedo with your foot was gambling with your life. The person who watches this watch sees nothing appealing in a Porsche Taycan or a Cayman. It's old, it's vintage, it's the person who actually wears driving gloves and tinkers with a Morris Minor or something. Retro is you. You're into not just Japanese salvage, but ideally vintage Levi's. It's also for a person that likes to customize. In my time with the watch, I found myself switching out the bezel all the time. It was fun and I'm sure it would wear off at some point, but I appreciated the option. Who's it not for? Well, it's for snobs who look down on quartz. They're missing out, but that's their problem, not mine. It's not for the trendy guy. It might have been the hot watch back in the hipster years before COVID, but that style isn't as in as it has been. And I don't see a venture capitalist wearing it either. More than anything though, it's for people that don't want to waste money and they care a little bit about design and history and they have some standards. A random off-the-shelf chronograph is just not going to do, so they look for something like this. Which brings me to my verdict. And I've been doing reviews for a while and reviewing watches isn't really the core of my channel and I've always been a little bit conflicted about it. On the one hand, I don't really think anyone should care what I think about a watch. Buying a watch is a personal experience and it's not like reviewing a graphics card for a PC. A graphics card is 98% about the metrics, the performance, the stability, how many frames, the power draw, and how closely the marketing hype and the performance actually matches. A watch just isn't that. I don't believe for a second that there's anybody on the planet that sorts all their watches by accuracy and only buys the most accurate one within a given price range. I don't believe that sapphire crystal is an objective parameter that should or shouldn't make or break a buying decision. So all I can do is share my personal opinion, and that shouldn't really sway anybody. There's only one way to know if you'll like a watch, and that's by going down to the store and trying it on. My point is reviewing a watch is inherently pointless to me because it's just my opinion that's no better or worse than anybody else's opinion. And I was using this old scale of grail or buy or shortlist and think about it or better options out there. And it doesn't work for me because it's so centered on a recommendation. Grail, buy, think about it. It runs counter to my principles. So I'm going to change the scale a little bit. I'm taking away the consumerist piece of it and I'm focusing just on how the watch affects me. So my new scale that I'm trying out is at the bottom. It's a watch that I'm going to remember forever because it's absolutely hideous. Second from the bottom, it's a watch I've forgotten about in a week's time. Third, nice watch. Fourth, a watch I might actively recommend to someone if they asked. Fifth, it's a watch I might keep coming back to. And at the very top, it's a watch that lives rent-free in my head. Now, for reference, in some of the watches I've reviewed recently, a Main Manhattan, nice watch. Christopher Ward 660, nice watch. Not a watch I've reviewed, but if I were to review it, I'd say Omega Equaterra, nice watch. Now the Atelier Win Ancestra, that's a watch I keep coming back to. Speedmaster in white, keep coming back to it. And this watch, I might actually recommend it to someone if they asked for an affordable vintage style chronograph with a little bit of history. But like I said, my opinion doesn't matter. What is relevant though is especially two things that I think are reasonably objective. One, this is how good watches are getting at this price point. It's not a fully mechanical movement, but the overall package is a testament to how good manufacturing has gotten these days. Not everything has to cost an arm and a leg. And two, it's good to try out watches like this. I've spent more money on watches than I like to think about. And I admit it, I do sometimes have a case of speed blindness. At some point, you just kind of get used to the prices of these pieces of jewelry. And I sometimes myself am guilty of being blind to how good this specific price range can be. This is a hobby where most people end up escalating their expense levels. This watch brings me a little bit down to earth. It's not foie gras, it's not a Heston Blumenthal masterpiece, but it is a damned good classic burger. Like, subscribe. Cheers.